This is manual transmission day, some sort of an elementary study on gears and whatnot. So you're either gonna know some of this stuff already, or you're gonna know not much of it already. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna show you what we're gonna, about the purpose of gears. Now pay attention, this is good stuff here. The purpose is to transmit rotating motion. Obviously you know that. So the engine turns around and everything's round all the way down to the tires. So it's got to go around and around. Now, and the pistons in the engine go up and down, but they're actually doing that. Okay, so this is me driving a Cobra.
Nice.
Believe it or not, by the time you got shifted through to third gear on that thing, and I was just driving it like I would any other car, Donnie was riding with me. He goes, "Did you know you're going over 100 miles an hour?" And I said, "Good grief." I didn't have any idea that thing was that overpowered, The shaft can drive the gear. The gear can drive the shaft. The gear can be free to turn on the shaft. This is how these transmissions work. Now I got one over here that you guys are going to need to know. See that one over there? I got that thing where we can set it up and we can actually show you guys how all this stuff works. Now, ultimately, you're going to need to know that. And we don't need to have anybody struggling at the end of manual transmission to figure out how the power flow works, okay? The sets of gears can be used to multiply torque and decrease speed, decrease torque. You got horsepower and then you got torque. Torque is basically whenever you put your torque wrench on something and you turn it, horsepower and torque are sort of married, because you got your muscles you're pushing on that torque wrench, right? But the amount of turning power that you're putting on that torque wrench is what's being measured, and so on and so forth. But the engine has got to have a certain amount of torque. I remember back on the old, whenever the Jeep Cherokee 4-liter first came out, it had 177 foot-pounds of torque, which was more than anything else in its class in those days, which is a little small SUV with a straight six in it.
Hey, Richard, what did we decide about getting you an oxygen cylinder? I remember
Yeah,
something about an oxygen
there was a
cylinder.
purchase order that she faxed to them to get me a cylinder, and the one that I'm swapping in for it is over there at in that cage in the other shop. Is he here now?
He's here now, and he said he didn't have a PO, so I don't know.
Yeah, he's got a PO. She faxed him one. She even sent me a PO, sent me a picture of the PO that she faxed him. So he's got a PO.
So,
But just tell him I'll get him next week.
he's a steering wheel holder.
Yeah.
It's basically what he does.
Just
So,
tell him I'll see him next week.
well, if you want to, y'all can swap it out with us.
Yeah, that's fine.
And if you need one,
Yeah,
we'll swap it and bring it down there. Just get the boys rolling down there.
And I mean, he's got a PO, but I don't have time to track it down.
I know, but well, with him, it's not productive to try to
Yeah,
get him to find it.
I
You know
got
what
you.
I'm saying?
All right, we'll get it.
All right.
Thanks. All right. He was a nice guy to come and look after me on that. We got a bottle of oxygen that's empty, and I got another one that's on this thing that's full. Anyway, I don't know why I got into all that. But anyway, all right. So transfer torque, leave the speed the same, or change the direction of torque. So gear rotation got to be understood when you're performing diagnosis and service, and that's the deal. So if you got one gear, if I had 7 gears up here, and I was turning the top one clockwise, what would the bottom one be turning?
Counterclockwise?
So if you've got an odd number of gears, they're always going to be turning the opposite direction when you get down to the other side, right? That's the whole point right there. 2 external gears in mesh rotating in opposite directions. Now planetary gear sets are a little bit different because you got an inside ring gear on those. That's another story. Engine driving a gear clockwise will make any gear in mesh with this gear to rotate counterclockwise. But if you put a third gear in there, if you add a third gear, you're basically going to have both of your business end gears turn in the same direction. And that's what happens in a manual transmission. You're basically adding a third gear. All right, now these are different kind of gears. Pay attention to this. It won't take us long to go through here. There's a lot of types of gears, and each one's got its own operating character. How many of you ever noticed that when you put a car in reverse and back it up, you always hear it going, you ever heard it makes noise in reverse? You ever hear that? That's because you're using Spur Gear. We'll talk about that. Helical gears are stronger because you got more teeth, more than one tooth in there. And these are little Spur Gears, which another place you'll see Spur bevel gears is in these differential. Okay. All right, so the Spur Gear is the simplest design used in manual transactions. You don't see, the only place you use this in a manual transmission is in reverse. Now, if you've got a bigger truck, you'll have spur gears in there because of the way they have to work. They have to be able to slide in and out. They don't use the shift forks in a big truck. And they actually will have a little plate on the side of it so you can hook a power takeoff to it too. And incidentally, just for future reference, when you hear the term backlash, that's actually how much space there is between the teeth of the gear. Click, 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 click. You're going to hear that later on. Okay, let me go here. All right, the advantage are its teeth cut straight and it can slide in and out of contact. And its disadvantage is it's noisy. And so it winds at a high speed if it's in a manual transmission. One time, when I was about 13 years old, my dad had an 8-in Ford tractor sitting in the yard. And I would piddle around with that thing, get it started, and I'd drive it all over the countryside. I'd go up and down the road, and I'd go through the field and all that kind of stuff. Well, one day the battery was dead on it. Couldn't get it to start, and these two yo-yos that lived over close by come over in our Chevy Nova, and they said, we'll hook this thing up to the back of the Nova and drive it up the road, and you can get it started that way. And they just figured they were going to have a good time. So I got up on that tractor, and I put in one of the gears, I don't remember which one it was in, and I was holding the clutch, and he took off up the road on that Nova, and he knew he was going faster than he ought to be going. He had that tractor going about 45 miles an hour, and I could hear the gears in that rear end going, yang, 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 yang. And he did this to tell me when to let off, and when I let off, the tractor kind of slid all over the road, and I got it started, but just about snatched a bumper slam off of his car. He did that to himself. I did not tell him to go. He just had to get it rolling a little bit, not going 45 miles an hour, He was either dumb or he was trying to scare me to death, which he just about did. I mean, I saw them kudzu vines going by on both sides of the road. I knew I was going to go hit up first. That was dangerous. Helical gears are the most common kind. That's what you see on that transmission I showed you over there. All right, so gear ratios, this Archimedes said, give me a lever long enough and a place to put it and I can lift the world. A lever is really something that like your screwdriver, you use a lever, when you're prying on something. Okay, you can multiply force with a lever. On transmission gears, think about this, there are a set of levers arranged in a circle. And they multiply force by the difference in size and number of teeth of the gear. All right, gear reduction is how an engine that produces 300 foot-pounds of torque can move a 3,000-pound car. 300 foot-pounds of torque, car weighs 3,000 pounds. That ain't really enough unless you got something in between it, right? So you got transmission gear ratios. All right, they're ones that are same size or have the same number or a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, let me ask you this. If I had 3 32 gears in the rear end, what would that mean? You ever pretty much talking about these hot rod guys, they have 411 gears and all that. You remember them say those words? Or y'all ever hear that? Like a 410, 411. The 411, and I'll talk about that again in a little bit, it's how many times the drive shaft turns compared to how many times the wheels turn. So if the drive shaft turns more often per turn of the wheels, is that going to give you more torque or less torque?
Do less.
Huh?
Less torque.
No, you think about that. If you're gonna turn it like, you remember when you're old, you've ridden a 10-speed bicycle, right? When you're in low gear on a 10-speed bicycle and you're pedaling, you got a pedal to beat the band to get a little bit of speed up. You know what I'm talking about? That's what this is. Lots of turns of the drive shaft for one turn of the wheels means you got a lot of oomph back there, a lot of torque available at the rear end. Okay. The two gears are both the same size, they have the same number of teeth. It's a 1-to-1 gear ratio, see? Same number of teeth. All right. So each time the driving gear turns one way, the other gear turns the other way, the opposite thing. Okay, so the only difference between them is they're rotating opposite directions. 1-to-1 gear is direct drive, because the driving gears rotate one time for each rotation of the driven gear. Gear ratios are usually written with a colon. See that? 1:1. That means 1-to-1. Now this one right here is 3.5-to-1. Now they didn't draw all the teeth, but they're basically just trying to show you, that right there. Okay, the smaller gear on the left has 16 teeth, and it's driving a big gear on the right that has 32 teeth. Okay, the 16-tooth gear is turning with 10 pounds of torque, but it rotates twice for every rotation of the 32-tooth driven gear. So you're multiplying the torque by putting a little gear driving a big gear. That's when you're in your lower gears. But when you get into your higher gears, you get closer to 1-to-1. When you got your bicycle in the highest gear, how you turn it slow and you're going on down the road, I mean, that's basically what you're thinking about right there. Incidentally, if you got two gears that are driven by a chain, you don't have this backwards business going on. They're basically both going the same way because the chain's always carrying it around. That causes the driven gear to have twice as much torque, so you've multiplied your torque. So you basically, if you got 10 pounds of torque here, now you got 20 pounds of torque here, but it only turns half as fast. You remember on brakes, whenever it brakes, I don't know if you guys got into Pascal's law going to your electube stuff, but when you've got a little piston that's pushing a big piston, and if it's half as big as the big piston only moves half as far, but with twice as much force as you're putting on it. That's the same kind of deal. How does an engine that produces 300 pounds move a 3,000 pound vehicle? Okay, now you got a transmission, you got the drive shaft, you got the differential. Now you got a gear ratio here, and you got a gear ratio here. So basically, you're going to have to multiply this. If this right here is a gear ratio of 4 to 1, and this is 3 to 1, you multiply that, you get how much torque is actually being delivered right here. 300 pounds of engine torque connected to a drivetrain with a total of 10 to 1. The result is 3,000 pounds of torque, and that's when it's taken off. And the power is needed to move the vehicle. Now, there's 1 to 1, there's 2 to 1. You get those gears in your mind, you won't forget that. There's a drawback. The driving gear's got to turn a lot more times. You notice how the starter gear is really little, and the flywheel gear is really big. The starter's got to spin really, really fast to spin the motor fast enough to start. And usually the gear ratio on the average is about 14 to 1. The starter gear is turning about 14 times for every one time the flywheel turns. So just remember that. All right, now, whenever you push a car, and you ever push a car?
Mm-hmm.
All right, when you first start it moving, it's really, really hard to get it moving, isn't it? Really hard to get it moving. Once you get it going, you can kind of keep it going pretty easy, right? Okay, that's the same kind of way as whenever you're doing an electrical load is like that too. If you get into electrical, it takes more amps to get the current started flowing than it does to keep it flowing. But that's the same way this one. So after you get it moving, you can shift into another gear and get a little more speed, but you don't need as much torque because you're already moving. But getting it started, why is it that it takes more to get it going than it does to keep it going? What's the principle you learned about? You learned that in school? Think about it. Inertia, inertia is what I'm talking about. If something's sitting still, it wants to stay still. If it's moving, it wants to stay moving, unless it's affected by an outside force. Okay, now, here's an example of the gear ratios. Reverse, 3.4 to 1. First gear, 3.97 to 1. Which one of these ratios is a higher ratio?
Reverse.
Reverse is a higher ratio than first gear. Second gear is 2.34 to 1, third gear is 1.4, fourth gear is 1 to 1, and fifth gear, which is overdrive, is 0.79 to 1. Think about that, because that means the engine, which is over here, this goes to the drive shaft, the engine is actually turning slower than the drive shaft when you're in overdrive. And that's the way it is when you're in overdrive in an automatic transmission too, because your torque converter clutch locks up in the front on that one. And there's your other little thing around. This is what the transmission gears look like down in there, and these forks are what moves it back forward. You'll see how that works a little bit later. But reverse and first through third gears are reduction ratio gears. Fourth gear is 1 to 1, which means every turn of it coming in the front is going to be a turn coming out the back, and that's direct drive. Okay, so overdrive. Anytime the driving gear is rotating slower than the driven gear, it's an overdrive gear ratio. I heard a story when I was at one of my schools up there about this guy that bought a 67 Chevelle, a 396 in it, And back in the olden days, you could do crazy stuff on your car out there on the road and you wouldn't get in all that much trouble for it. But he was running all over town with that new car, and he was outrunning the cops and just making it, up and down the roads out there somewhere in North Alabama. And they couldn't figure out what to do to stop that guy, because they didn't really want to put a roadblock up that he might, run into and crash and kill somebody. They just tried to get him to pull over and catch him, and all they couldn't catch him, he's too fast. And the guy that was telling this story was the one that was doing this hogwash back in the 60s. And he said, this old sheriff came out with a 63 Chevy Biscayne that had an overdrive transmission on it. And the overdrive transmissions on them old Chevys, and some of the you'd put it in first gear, and it had a little solenoid on the side and the planetary gear set back there. But you put it in first gear, give it the gas, you let off, and you had a second gear. All you had to do is let off and you get another gear. Then you go to second gear, it would drop out of overdrive. So you had an overdrive ratio for each gear, right? So you basically had 6 different speeds. Okay, so this guy got headed down the hill, this long hill into this valley, down this long straight road. And he was going downhill and he hit that thing, he didn't know how fast he's going, he'd already gone around there and bumping a post on the other side. And that guy, the cop on that 63 Biscayne come up behind him. And he says, and I looked over at that guy, when he went by me, I saw him reach up to pull it down in high. He said he had 2 gears left to go when he passed him, you know. And he just, that took all the fun out of his ride, you know, he got, of course they locked him up. Okay, so that was overdrive though. Back in the olden days, in the 60s, a lot of the vehicles had overdrive. If you didn't want to use overdrive because you were pulling a trailer or something, you would pull this thing out on the dash. It kind of looked like a park brake release and it said overdrive on it. Pull it out, it wouldn't work. And so that's what the overdrive ratios let the drivetrain turn faster than the engine because of the high speed. Little torque is needed to keep the vehicle moving. Now what's peculiar about this transmission right here that you see? Notice it doesn't, I mean, well, it has shift forks, but look how they operate. See, they got funky little channels here. Now, I will tell you this, and this is something you need to remember. Some of your newer transmissions and what they're going to is there's talk of getting away from automatic transmissions and clutches and stuff. And they actually are building these transmissions in some of the smaller Ford cars and stuff that are built like this on the inside. But and they've got 2 input shafts and 2 clutch discs and all, and they shift automatically. You just drive off and they got gears inside them just like this, and they shift, you know, using a similar thing to these one. So you don't actually have to do this, you just drive off, you know, put it and go. Now, overdrive means the drive shaft's running faster than the engine, and it gives you better fuel economy. That's why a Crown Victoria, like that blue one you got working on the other day, will get 26, 28 miles to the gallon on the highway. Because they got they got a high-speed rear end under there, and they kind of got you know, that overdrive ratio in the transmission. And they started coming out. They came out in 1979 with that one, and they were getting gas mileage up in the 20s even on those cars back in '79. So let's say we got a differential ratio with a 3.781. What's this? This is the differential gears. 3.78 turns. This is coming from the drive shaft to 1 turn of the wheels. So that's 3.78 to 1, right? Okay, now this is from the engine. Now this is not exactly accurate because actually whenever you're in 4th gear, you're able to lock these 2 shafts together and that gives you your 1-to-1. But you notice this, I want you to notice this, this is the early beginnings of that. This shaft here coming in from the engine is always turning that counter shaft even when it's in neutral. And I'm going to show you a diagram of that, you know, in another presentation later on. This collar right here that's hooked to the shifter that you can't see up here because it's on the words is actually causing this shaft to be locked to that gear. So this is driving that counter shaft. And there's your 3rd gear down there that's in between. See, because you got a gear here and a gear here and a gear here and a gear here. So because this one's turning that one, imagine these all being the same gear, you turning this one in the same direction as you are that one because you got this 3rd gear in there. And the drive shaft is driving that. So if you've got 1st gear to 3.97 to 1, you know, which would be right here. So 3.97 turns of this gear is going to turn this gear 1 turn, right? And you got a differential gauge ratio of 3.78. You're going to multiply that. See that? You find the total gear reduction from the engine to the wheels is 15 to 1 on that one. Pretty strong, isn't it? So the torque of the engine is being multiplied by 15 times by the driveline. If you got 200 horsepower, you know, which is that Crown Vic I was talking about a minute ago, it's got about 210 horsepower is all it's got. But you know, it goes really strong whenever you take off in spite of all that. But anyway, that's how that works. Has anybody got any, is there anything you don't understand about this? Because I probably ought to be having you doing a written test, right? Mm-hmm. And this is pretty straight. You getting it? Mm-hmm. All right. All right. Now what I'm going to do, just very briefly, let me put my, I'm trying to find somewhere to put that, and then I'm going to get this out just for a second here. And I got this I put this on a steel plate. There you
Wasn't
go.
on a steel plate last semester?
No, I was trying to make it hard on you, so I didn't put it on a steel plate for this semester. All right. All right.
I guess I'm a cowboy.
Yeah. Second-rate amateurs, that's what it is. All right, you see that? All right, now I'm gonna give you guys a little rundown on this. It won't take me just a minute to show you this. I'm not gonna go into it in huge detail, but I'm gonna give you a little bit of something to chew on here.
Pay attention, this will be your final.
Oh, they'll have a harder final than you did.
Well,
Okay.
I'm not giving any answers,
Yeah.
just pay attention.
Well, see this right here? You see the input shaft turning? All right, you see that, where you can see this now. You see the, this is the counter shaft down here. All right, so this right back here is where the shifter connects. And this actually moves your shift forks. There's a shift fork back here, there's a shift fork right here, and a shift fork right here. This came out of a 2000 Jeep Wrangler. All right, now your input shaft, your clutch goes on here. All right, so whenever you mash your clutch and all, you're releasing this from the engine and letting it go. And this bearing right here, and I'm gonna say this, probably gonna hear me say this again, but I'm gonna tell you something. If you ever hear anybody sell a manual transmission like this, and they say, it's really quiet in fourth gear, but it whines to beat the band in every other gear but fourth. Right? That bearing right there will be where your trouble is. Because in fourth gear, it's a straight lockup all the way through, and you don't have any side load on that gear. But even when you're in neutral, see, the drive shaft ain't turning. You got that. Now, this thing right here is a little bit annoying, and I usually have to bump it, you know. All right, that gear right there, what gear is that? I just went in and bumped that one. What gear is that? Somebody tell me. Huh? First is way back here.
That's third.
Think about it. I'm turning this.
That's reverse.
No, it's just straight like a fourth.
No, that ain't reverse.
That's not, it's fives and bad, no, it's third.
That's third. That's third. That's right.
That's third.
That's third
Fives
gear.
and bad, it's
See
third.
that? It's third gear. All right. Have you ever seen that before?
Reverse, you turn
Huh?
it one way, and the
There you
output,
go.
input's turning
There you
opposite
go.
direction.
Now reverse is right here. You're actually in the fourth gear to that. See? See how that works? That's reverse. And the outside of this shift collar is used for a gear. And this is a spur gear. You see the spur gear right here? That's why it's noisy when you're backing up. Now I'll give you some more information about this as we move on. But anyway, that gives you a little bit of information about that. Yeah, that's a cool thing. Now, if you happen to be fooling with this, don't bump this too far forward, or you'll have to fool with putting those little detents back in there like Hot Shot did over there, and which was sort of second-rate amateurish thing that he did there, but it's okay.
We got it.
You notice I put a handle on this, and I put it on this steel plate, so that it would be able to stand up, and that's a whole lot better than it was. The clutch disc,
You put the
probably ought to be
transaxle on
put
a
on
plate?
there. Huh?
You put the transaxle on a plate?
No,
Transaxle?
no, but I'll figure out a way to do that later. Anyway, there's where the clutch goes, right there on that. All right, now making anything any clearer? You learned something from that? That look pretty good? All right.